But we kick off every weekend episode with our waiver wire pickups for you on a Monday. Who are you going to pick up that's going to catapult you for this week? So I got a few guys for you that are right now borderline, or guys who aren't, rostered in every league, or in most leagues might not be rostered. And I'll start with Edmundo Sosa, who's rostered in only 14% of Yahoo leagues in the last 2 weeks. He has 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, 9 runs scored. Not a ton. He's not getting a ton of plate appearances. He's eligible at shortstop and third base. He's not getting a ton of plate appearances for Philly, but he's on a Philadelphia Philly team that's a stacked roster, and he's on base 455 over the last 2 weeks. A 455 on base, and on the season he has a 418 on base. So you figured if he's playing himself enough into the lineup that he gets some at bats, and I know there's Trey Turner, and so he's gotten at bats with Trey out, but now Trey's back. I get it. I get there's issues. There's a hard time to get him in the lineup. But when you're hitting like this, when you're contributing, when you're getting on base, you're going to find ways. Teams are going to find ways to keep you in the lineup. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Now, I know there have been a bunch of injuries at catcher as well, and I'm dealing with this. We talked about a few different guys who are either injured or just not playing well. We obviously talked about Jefferson in Minnesota. We obviously talked about Contreras in St. Louis. So there's a bunch of guys who are hurt at catcher. So where can you go for help at the catcher position? Well, actually, Danny Jensen. Also, not as many plate appearances as you like, but the last week he did have 17 plate appearances and was batting had a 400 on base. Not a ton of production numbers, only a home run, 6 RBIs, 4 runs scored. Not like great, but considering the on base and the lack of depth at the catcher position, that might be someone, if you're in need of a catcher, you could look at him. Or one of the best defensive catchers, a guy who I love watching on the defensive end, but he's also had a good offensive week. That's Patrick Bailey. 438 over the last week. As he comes back, he was hurt, but he came back, played the last week, 438 on base, a homer, 7 RBIs, a stolen base, and 4 runs scored. So maybe you could get a little bit of offense, squeeze something out of Patrick Bailey, who's only rostered in 10% of leagues in Yahoo. Pick him up and then see where it leads you. If you just need someone to fill for a couple of weeks, if you're streaming catchers, those are a couple of good options. And then the last one that could be a different option for you, if you're looking for a guy who has proven at times that he can be really good and is starting to get going a little bit, is Tommy Pham. He has a 404 on base over the last 2 weeks, 8 runs, a home run, 4 RBIs, 2 stolen bases. So maybe starting to get going a little bit. And for a White Sox team, that's terrible. Just see what you can get out of him. And then again, easy guy to kind of drop if you need to. He's now rostered in 19% of fantasy leagues in Yahoo, so plus 7% week over week. So those 4 guys, Edmundo Sosa from the Phillies, who's a infielder, plays third base and shortstop. Danny Jensen from Toronto, and then obviously Patrick Bailey from San Francisco are the 2 catchers that I think you could look at for some catcher production, which I know can be hard to come by at times. And then Tommy Pham is a center fielder, or an outfielder in general, who maybe you can get some production out of. By the way, another note, I'll give you a little prospect nugget. I know Vince isn't here, but you want a prospect report? Come to me. I got your prospect report too. Prospect nugget. Yesterday, Jason Dominguez hit a home run at Double-A. So I don't know what happens with the Yankee outfield. I always say it'll work itself out. I keep saying that I do believe Judge will eventually get hurt. Judge, Stanton, one of them's going to get hurt. So it'll work itself out, I believe, but he's got to come up. You can't keep him in the minors for that long if he's playing well down there. Jason Dominguez, we saw what he could do at the major league level. So there's a little prospect report for you. Pitchers to stream for this week as we move along to the next category. I always talk about the streaming pitchers, and I have 2 for you this week that I truly believe in. In fact, they're both already on my team. I've talked about them in the past, but one is only rostered in 32% of fantasy leagues. He's been back and forth between the bullpen and starting. That's mostly why. The other one, only 22% of leagues, and actually he's pitching a lot better than even his numbers would suggest. The first one is Cole Irvin, 32% of leagues. That's down 14% from last week. And that's really just because of an innings thing. If he got the proper innings, I think he'd be more rostered. Cole Irvin this week also, he's a starting pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles, but he moves back and forth between the bullpen and starting, but he's actually making 2 starts this week. He's going to start at home twice, once against Boston and once against Tampa, for the Orioles. Obviously, the Orioles win a lot of games. If you're in a wins league, that could be huge. And he's been solid. He's been solid his last couple of starts. So I know he's been back and forth, but if you can get him this week, I think would be a good week to stream him. And then the other one is a guy I talked about a lot, and that's Chris Paddock. Only one start likely this week is going to be Kansas City. His last start, I remember I have him. His start against the Yankees wasn't great. Then he had a really good start after that start against Cleveland, where he had 8 innings, 6 strikeouts. His last start, he only threw 5 innings, but he could have had the quality start. I forget what it was. He came out for the 6th inning and a couple of weak hits or whatever it was. I'm forgetting exactly what it was, but he could have gone to 6 innings, and instead he comes out, gets pulled, gave up runs. I think he had 0 runs at that point, something like that. So all of a sudden he went from like a great start to a mediocre looking start where it's just 5 innings and 3 strikeouts and not a great output overall. But Chris Paddock actually has been better than the numbers look over the last couple of starts. Another guy, by the way, who was really good. If you don't have him, Kyle Bradish, my God, 7 innings, 11 strikeouts today. Dude, 7 no-hit innings with 11 strikeouts. So Kyle Bradish been really good as well as Reese Olson. If you're not in on Reese Olson, pick up Reese Olson. If you can't, you probably can't anymore. He has a 1.92 ERA on the season. And today, again, for the Tigers, 6 1/3 innings with 4 strikeouts. Or was this not today? It was yesterday. It was this weekend. 6 1/3 innings, 3 hits, no runs, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts. Reese Olson, a name to be looking at, has been exceptional so far this year for the Tigers and their pitching rotation. By the way, did you see that Tiger game? I think that was today, right? Was that the Tiger game today, or was it yesterday? That was like 11-11, ridiculous game. Just kept going back and forth. I think it was the Tigers. I want to say Toronto, and then the Tigers eventually walked it off. Speaking of Toronto, we'll get there in a second. We have I didn't write it, but pretend it says lock of the week under MVP of the week. We have the MVP of the week and then the lock of the week. I guess I forgot to put it in. That's my bad. So I'll give you my MVP of the week, and it's Corey Seager. Corey Seager, I don't know if you saw, if you're not following the Just Fantasy Baseball account on Twitter, you should be following. They tweeted this out. I think he has 5 home runs, 7 RBIs, and a 500 on base, and 7 runs scored in the last week. So Corey Seager just been on a home run tear. I actually tried to trade for him because I need home runs, and he's been on such a home run tear. So Corey Seager is my MVP of the week. But my lock for the upcoming week, because listen to what this guy has been doing. Here's my lock for the upcoming week, and it is Bo Bichette. It's finally happened. And guess what? If you listen to me on this podcast over and over and over again, all I did was tell you to buy Bo Bichette stock, buy his stock, buy his stock, buy his stock. Maybe you listened to me, maybe you didn't. Well, guess what? If you didn't, you're just dumb. You're not that smart. His last game, 2 for 5, a run scored, 2 RBIs. Previous game was over 4. Then 2 for 4 the game before that. 3 for 5 with an RBI and a run scored the game before that. 2 for 4 with an RBI, run scored. 3 RBIs, home run, run scored. 4 for 4 last week. This guy has been on some kind of tear. If you now look at the numbers over the last 2 weeks. He has 9 RBIs. He has 4 runs scored. He has a stolen base. Only 1 home run in that span, but a .429 on base percentage for Bo Bichette. I told you to buy low on Bo. It's probably too late to buy low on Bo. Bo Bichette has arrived. Welcome to the season, Bo Bichette. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate you, good sir, for joining us in this fantasy baseball season. And now it's probably too late to buy low on him. Everyone's in on him right now. So Bo Bichette is my lock. He's going to have a great week as he goes. Let me check the schedule. See, I'm so confident in Bo Bichette that I didn't even check the schedule. I wasn't like, oh, it depends who they play. They're playing the White Sox. He's going to mash in Chicago this week. They play the White Sox, and then later this week, Bo Bichette is going to be at home against Pittsburgh. Lock it up. Bo Bichette is going to have an incredible week in fantasy baseball this week.